I'll do is I'll share this Cody Twitter page
Yeah, I
and
will.
everything, and I
I
think
will retweet.
we should be live on Keeping It Geekly right now.
Ooh,
Yes, we are good to go. So I am good as long as you are.
I am good to go.
Let's begin in 3, 2, 1. Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic podcast. It's your Cape Crusader Cody, and we're keeping it geekly. Once again, I'm getting tongue-tied with our good friend, Short Box Summary, aka George. We're here to break down Oppenheimer, the movie that just recently came out, and how explosive it was. George, how have you been, man?
I've been good. It's summer. Movies are back. I went and saw Asteroid City on Thursday. I saw Barbie on Friday at a matinee, and then I saw a 7 o'clock screening of Oppenheimer on the biggest screen in Vermont. I am just happy as shit that movies
How
are back,
so?
man.
Yeah, how was Barbie?
I really liked it, man. I bought tickets to see that and Asteroid City again this weekend. I'm very excited. I think
That's
Asteroid City, I think, is probably Wes Anderson's like most complex movie.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's his best, but it's the one I'm most interested in seeing again. And Barbie, man, I'm taking my girlfriend, I'm taking my dad to see it on Sunday. I am so excited to see it again.
So I've seen Oppenheimer right when it dropped, July 21st.
Mhm.
And let's go ahead. We're going to be doing the non-spoiler segment first. We're going to kind of just give our thoughts on things. First and foremost, I went into it thinking it was going to be different. I wasn't sure how much of my interest it was going to catch. Not that it was a complex like story, what they're dealing with, but more or less like just the story of making the bomb. And I was really wrong. I felt like there was so much to explore, and maybe that's due to Nolan's ability to write and kind of just dive into deeper aspects and his usage of like perspective. The different color changes. I think we could talk about that. That was shown in trailers and such. But
Yeah.
the way they handled that was just so awesome. It really like tied me into the story of him and the creation of this bomb. I mean, what about you?
I think Nolan is great at plotting in his movies, but this is the first time I really felt like he was great. And I think he wrote this with his brother Jonathan, and it's based off a book called American Prometheus. This is the first movie I remember seeing where I'm like, oh fuck, he's really good at dialogue too.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's great because so much of this movie is just adults in rooms talking about
Yes.
complex stuff. So it's great that this is the one he stuck the landing on.
And
Him and the other writers, whoever they are.
I would see where maybe some, people would have boring dialogue and with that subject, rightfully so, but it was so engaging and so intriguing, and I think it's because how they kept flashing back and forth from the different timelines. We're going to be looking off the Wikipedia just so things are, a little bit more clear, but we had his something happening in 1954 and then something else happening just 5 years later, without spoiling too much. So, I mean, the way they handled that, having it be black and white, and then having it be, in color when they were going back in time, I really thought that was really mesmerizing. I mean, it was engaging. I think the fact that they were able to swap it back and forth is what made the plot work as good as it did.
Mhm. I agree. I think it's hard to talk about the opening scene without talking about the final scene
Hmm.
because like this feels very much like The Prestige, another Nolan movie. I think between Batman Begins and Dark Knight, where it is just like the idea of perception and like what a moment means to one person versus what it means to someone else. And I think this entire movie hinges on the opening shot and the closing shot. I think it was this movie's really good, man.
Yeah, yeah.
This movie's
Although
really
I
good.
did see it did catch some flack. And I don't think it's too much spoiler, but it was 100% focused on the American side of things, and I seen a lot of people thought it should have had some focus on the other sides as well, like the repercussions of it. I mean,
Mhm.
although we did hear about the repercussions, we didn't actually get to really see them.
Yeah, it was really centered around his legacy as opposed to like the world's legacy and like the world I guess that we were left with post nuclear America, right?
Hmm.
And so it's tough because like this was the story and this story was already clocking in at 3 hours. And there was a movie series that came out in 2007, 2008, where I think it was Clint Eastwood. He did Flags of Our Fathers, which is a World
Hmm.
War II movie from the Americans' perspective. And then he did Letters to Iwo Jima, which was a World War II movie from the Japanese perspective. And so, like, I think it is possible. I think it's really interesting that Clint Eastwood got to direct two back-to-back World War II movies. Like I think about the same conflict just from different sides, but like
Hmm.
again, like there's only so much runtime in a movie, and like this was really complex. And I think if you were to talk about the non-American side, like that's a different movie, that's a different
Yeah.
message than what this one was trying to do. Not to say that there isn't room for that
Hmm.
or any of it, because you're right, there was none of it even remotely discussed in this movie.
And I can really agree with that as well. That would be a totally different movie. But one thing too is like it was a 3 hour long movie. Did you feel like we could have shortened that up at all?
Yes and no. I really feel like we got two different movies. I feel like the first 2 hours were one movie leading up to a pretty important event that I think everyone's expecting, but we're still in non-spoiler territory, so I'm not going to say what it
Hmm.
was. And then the final hour was like a completely different movie. And so, in that regard, I think the first 2 hours went by really quickly, and then the last hour kind of felt a little bit slower, despite the fact that like it was moving faster throughout, like the scenes and the interactions and like the dialogues, everything that was going on was at much more of a breakneck pace. But I think it was because we didn't know what to expect after the big event,
Yeah.
and so because of that, it felt a little longer and a little like almost like a detective story where we're trying to put together what the significance of all this was.
And I will say too, I mean, Jesus Christ, this plot gets like so intertwined, and it's almost like a chess game. The way that it falls and how everything lands, and it was just the way it was structured was just phenomenal.
Hmm. I yeah, completely agree.
So I mean, I closing thoughts. I would say if you're on the fence about watching it, definitely go watch it. It was good. 3 hours. It's pretty long. There are some spots where you can go take a pee break. I would say. I mean, but the thing is, it's tough. Like because there's so much happening. Where if you step out at the wrong time, you're gonna miss something pivotal.
Hmm. I do think this is a tough movie. I will say I got like a large soda and I didn't have to go pee. People are different, bodies are different. I
Yeah, I
understand.
had a medium, and my bladder held its will. It's
Yeah,
like you're good, you're good.
I think go with a small, go with a medium, and then it'll be less of a concern. But
So
man, this movie, like, I'm so excited to get into the spoiler territory of stuff.
And I think what we could do is actually just dive into it right now. So if you guys are watching, you haven't seen it, go ahead and pause it. Come back to this video when you get the chance so we don't ruin anything for you. Once again, we're going to be going off of the Wikipedia, encyclopedia entry for this. It's going to be going, the film events occur in a nonlinear timeline alternating between Oppenheimer's story from Cambridge to Los Alamos and his security hearing in 1954, and then Strauss's confirmation hearing in 1959. So it's going to be summarized in chronological order. First off the rip, Robert Downey Jr. fucking killed it, dude.
Oh, welcome back, Academy Award winner Robert Downey Jr.
God, dude.
I miss that guy. I love Tony Stark. I love Iron Man, and there's a lot to be said about the fact that he's playing this character in this movie about nuclear arms proliferation
Mm-hmm.
and the industrial war complex. Like it's pretty. I wonder if that was intentional or if it was just the simple fact that Robert Downey Jr. is just a great fucking actor.
Was
And I
this
miss
his
that.
first movie outside of the MCU?
No, he did that Doolittle movie, I think. That was on all the Amazon boxes a couple Christmases ago,
Okay.
a couple holidays ago. I
But this
never
like
saw it.
his first like major fucking like
Yeah.
role, like, yeah. So I mean, he was nefarious. It was so fucking good. Just, oh man, watching him work his fucking magic in a character outside of Tony Stark. It's, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to break away from it. I was so used to him as Iron Man, for what, 10 years. So
Mhm.
seeing him as someone else, it was just like, whew, what is this?
Do you think it helped that so much of his scenes were in black and white, and he also like looked older? Like
Yeah.
he didn't look like Tony Stark. It
Yeah,
helps that he didn't have like the weird goatee and slick back hair.
I
But
think the black and white definitely added a lot of emphasis on his character. A lot of, I don't know, when you eliminate color, you eliminate so much emotion, and it was just so raw every scene he was in.
Mhm.
And that hearing was just fucking wild. So let's start off from the rip. It's a 2023 biographical thriller film. We have Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer, Emily Blunt as Oppenheimer's wife, Kitty, Matt Damon as General Leslie Groves. Matt Damon fucking killed it too. Oh my god, dude.
Yeah.
Robert Downey Jr. as Louis Strauss, a senior member of the United States Atomic Energy Commission. And then Florence Pugh, Josh Hartnett. I didn't know Josh Hartnett was in this.
Oh, he's back, baby, and he was excellent. Like it is, like you were talking about Robert Downey Jr. I'm like, yeah, he might be my favorite actor. Then you mentioned Matt Damon. It's like, oh, he might have been my favorite role. And then saying Josh Hartnett, I'm like, oh, he might have been Florence
So who
Pugh.
was he?
She might have been. Who is Josh Hartnett?
Yeah.
I can't remember his name, but he actually like invented something. He wasn't just like a theoretical physicist.
Okay, I got you.
He invented the cyclotron, I think,
Mm-hmm.
which was used in the development of the nuclear bomb. So he was like he's like, dude, I've been there, I did it.
Oh,
and like,
wait, was he the guy that was like, enough of this political shit?
he was the guy with glasses who kept trying to shut him down every time he talked about unionizing the labs.
He was so good. I can't believe that was.
Hartnett, yeah.
I can't believe that. I thought I fucking recognized him. Yeah, dude, he was incredible. So, I mean, let's go ahead and we'll start off right off the rip. So we start with 1926, 22-year-old J. Robert Oppenheimer grapples with homesickness and anxiety. He's studying under in Cambridge. And then I really thought this scene was really interesting, where we got to see a lot of the brilliant minds like Heisenberg working, and then like kind of the seeds getting planted here. During this time, and I'm going to probably butcher some of these pronunciations, but this is where he meets a member of the Communist Party. And that is a big plot point in this movie. I think if it wasn't for any of the communist threads, like, this story probably would not have been as impactful. I mean, the whole thing based upon his interactions with the communist.
Completely agree, because it also just talks like that plays into like America's tenuous alliance with Russia during the war. Also, really plants the seeds for like the McCarthyism post-war hysteria, right? Like the Red Scare shit that was happening. And so the fact that it was just like such an innocent and like innocuous introduction, and like everyone was talking about it the way like, oh, have you heard of light cigarettes? Like they're much better for like they were talking about it at dinner parties so casually.
Yeah.
And then just like like us like in the future knowing like, I think this is going to be a pretty big deal. Like it was just like that felt like Hitchcock. Like the thrill isn't seeing the bomb go off, right? Like that's not suspense. Suspense is showing a family at a dinner table and then showing like the countdown of a bomb. Like that's suspense. Yeah. And like it felt like that, just with conversation that intellectuals would have in the parlor room of their swanky homes. It's really good.
And so this is where he also meets his future wife, a biologist and ex-communist. So then everything's going to be in chronological order. It might be a little bit rough for us, since we, when we see it, it's not. They are balancing the hearings with everything else. So now we pivot to Army General Leslie Groves recruiting Oppenheimer to lead the Manhattan Project to develop an atomic bomb. And I really love their interaction, like just how smug Oppenheimer was. One thing we're missing out too, because everything's kind of out of order, but when he goes to poison his professor, I fucking loved how like anxiety ridden that was. Like when he goes to poison the apple and then he's running, and then that more prestigious professor's in there is about to eat and he fucking grabs it.
Oh, that was Niels Bohr, right?
Okay,
like,
yeah.
Okay, and that was the dude who like invented the model of the atom, right? Like that's a name I still remember from like 9th grade science class. Like I'm like, oh fuck, like that guy's a big deal.
My mind is too melted to remember anything from high school.
But no, it was incredible. And like I did some reading on the movie. I just wanted to like other people's takes, and like someone referred to Cillian Murphy's character as like Adam, Eve, and the snake, like because of like the fact that it was like a poison apple. And I'm just like, oh fuck, that's really good, man.
That is good. That is good.
That's some smart shit. I wish I had that take. Go read The Ringer. They have really good writers.
So we see Oppenheimer assure Grove has no communist sympathies. He's also Jewish and is particularly driven by the Nazis possibly having a nuclear weapons program, headed by Heisenberg, previously mentioned earlier. So I love that little tie-in, and I never realized who Heisenberg was. When I watched, all I thought, I was like, this dude's gonna be wearing a fucking bowler hat, have a little goatee, and so I love kind of seeing that and being like, oh, this is Heisenberg. So the really interesting interaction there. Now we see him kind of get his team together and then start to build the camp at Los Alamos in New Mexico. We're kind of, it's hard for me to really remember because everything's out of order for us in chronological order. But I love the horseback scenes, like when they travel on horseback to go check out the site. and just how beautiful it was, like how secluded and beautiful it was, and just kind of the build up to everything.
Well, it's pretty amazing because I guess he chose that site because like that was where he like used to camp when he was a kid, right? And like
Hmm.
I think he like went out there once when he was really ill for like recovery. Like I think I read that like it was like when he had dysentery. And so like he just had like this emotional connection to the land. And this is like one of the things that they kind of like gloss over. It's like, oh yeah, what about all the indigenous people you kicked off this ground for the purpose of testing a nuclear weapon and like utterly destroying the ecology of this ancestral home for so many people.
Hmm.
Like that's a part like it's a 3 hour movie. You probably could have found like 3 minutes to mention that. Um, but no, it's just like, oh, like I love this place so much. Here's where I want to detonate the most powerful weapon that we're not sure may or may not ignite the atmosphere of the planet.
Yeah, I love
It's like
that part too.
here, you want to do this here. Okay, that's cool.
I love that part too. It was like in General Gross, and he's like, "Wait, it's gonna what?" He's like, "How sure are you?" And
There's a
even
non 0% chance.
yeah, even the talk with Einstein, where he talked and asked about the possibility, and Einstein wanted no part of it. Like I love that interaction so much.
Mhm. Einstein might be like I don't think he was like the best actor in the movie, but like those interactions with Einstein, I think are pretty critical to the movie and maybe my favorite part of it so
Hmm.
far. And I it's not playing locally near me. I traveled last week. I went to my little college town in Vermont to see it. So as soon as that movie and like my local theaters are like 3 weeks behind on everything. So as soon as it comes, like I'm very excited to see it again. Um, but man, those scenes right now, like those are the ones that I remember probably most vividly. Is
And he
every
was
time
like
he talked to
pivotal
Einstein.
too. Strauss was like obsessed with what Einstein said.
Hmm.
Because it was after that he left, right? He like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, yeah. And I don't think it was anything that Strauss thought it was, right? It was something.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
That's what I was talking about at the beginning, right? Like the subjectivity and like the perception, and just like how one moment will be one thing to one person, and one moment will be something
but
completely
that shows you
random
like
to someone
how
else.
nefarious Strauss was from the start. You
Oh
only
yeah,
you only think that because you're projecting it.
and how egotistical and narcissistic and petty and small he was, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
well,
really good.
I loved how they built it up, where Oppenheimer just fucking destroys him in a public setting, and then you see him kind of just hold on to that. And that
Mhm.
would make sense back then. They didn't have Twitter, they didn't have Facebook. All they had was the public standing. And if you get shown up as a clown, like, how are you supposed to recover from that?
My only problem with that scene is like I only understood it was a public beating of Strauss, like verbally, because they said it was. I didn't think anything he said was like overtly shitty
Oh, he was like
to
shitting
Strauss.
on him. It felt
Well,
like
no, he was talking about like transferring isotopes and like what the potential danger of that is, and like he said something like that and made some joke and that everyone laughed at. I barely understood it. I'm not a nuclear physicist. I'm not an astrophysicist. I've seen Star Wars a lot, but I know that's not the same thing. And like I don't know, it just seems so benign and casual.
Mhm.
And then just the fact that like, no, this is actually what drove Strauss for the next 17 fucking years, throughout his
Oh
life.
my god, dude. And the
Uh,
way it unraveled too, but we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So let's
mhm.
go ahead. So we already talked about Oppenheimer and Einstein talking about triggering a reaction that could destroy the world. This is also where we learn Oppenheimer finds out that a Soviet spy may have leaked the Manhattan's project intel to Russia. So that is like when the ante really started to get upped for me. It's like shit. Like now the opposition's building the same exact bomb you are. Like, and you see kind of just how he ran the place. There was, I felt so stressed watching it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It stressed me out. I was like, I probably would not be able to handle that shit.
No, I never want to work in management ever. It seems like a nightmare. I think there was one moment because I think it was, I forget who the leak was, but like I think Teller, Benny Safdie's character, like the guy with
Hmm.
like the huge chalkboard eraser eyebrows. I think he said like there was some discussion at some point that was talking about how like we can't be the only people with this power. Like there needs to be checks and balances. Another country having it will be the check and balance. And like I thought that was a really interesting, like it wasn't some loyalist who wanted Russia to have power. It was someone who thought like no one country should be in possession of something this powerful. And like
And that's an
I
interesting concept, isn't
yeah.
it? So when Germany surrenders in World War II, some project scientists doubt the bomb's continued importance. We see people really kind of struggling with that idea. The bomb's completed. The Trinity test is successful before the Potsdam conference. And this is where Harry Truman decides to drop the bombs. And it, forcing Japan to surrender, thrusting Oppenheimer into the public eye as the father of the atomic bomb. So, I mean, I really fucking loved how they did his guilt, showing him like in a crowded place, people are cheering, roaring, and he can't hear a thing because he feels so guilt-ridden, so like out of it, like by what happened.
Yeah, and that scene where he's like actually talking to Truman, right? Are we there yet?
Yeah, I think we're in that area.
Okay. Where he talks to Truman, he's just like, I just feel like I've got blood on my hands. He's like, you feel like you've got blood on your hands? You just built the thing. I was the one who launched it. And then I think after that, he's like, get this crybaby out of here. And it's Gary Oldman who just crushes.
Kills it. He's been in so many roles. It's insane.
Comes in off the bench, scores 9 points in 48 seconds. I don't know how he does it. He's just so good. And then he's just like completely like emasculates Oppenheimer, I guess, right? Just like, like you're just a fucking like pencil pushing nerd. Get out of here. Like you're not brave enough to make decisions, but like you thought it was a good idea to make the bomb. Like I don't want to see you baby. And so just takes him out. Unreal.
After this, though, Oppenheimer decides to start to advocate against further nuclear development, especially hydrogen bombs, and this puts him against Teller. His stance becomes a point of contention in tense Cold War with the Soviet Union. And then this is where we see Strauss start to resent Oppenheimer for publicly dismissing his concerns regarding the export of radioisotopes. So we see, at a hearing intended to remove Oppenheimer from political influence, they're like canceling his visas. I think that's what it was.
Not his visa, his clearance.
His clearance, his clearance.
Security clearance, yeah.
So, and with that, it was forcing him to go to a hearing, which they didn't care about the clearance. They cared about making this all public. And I mean, we kind of jumped over some things. They didn't really get into a whole lot. But I mean, his affair with Florence Pugh, I forgot the character's name.
I forget the character's name too. I know she was a psychologist, right? Because like they met at Berkeley when he was teaching there.
I'm trying to look it up right now.
No, Florence Pugh is great. Like they got two of like the best living actresses to play like the two most important women in his life, right? Like Florence Pugh to play his mistress, and Emily Blunt to play his wife. And like the damn shame is like I could have watched 10 more scenes with each of them, like they were so good. Emily Blunt during the hearing.
God, dude. And then the way she wouldn't shake their hands like 10 years later, or, whatever X amount of years later when he's being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah. Just amazing stuff from incredible actors and actresses. And it's just like, God, like this was 3 hours. Like this movie could have been 5 hours. Yeah. And I still would have sat down for it. Maybe then it should have had an intermission. Yeah.
It was so raw too. I mean, the cheating, the affair, God, that was so graphic. Not even the sex part, just like the hallucinations of it, right? Like when he's at the hearing talking about it, and Emily is seeing, or his wife Kitty is seeing, the affair happen in the chair right in front of her. Like it was wild. And then the suicide too. Holy fuck, And then his wife finding him and being like, pull it the fucking together. Like oh God, dude, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, him having like a panic attack out in the woods about her death. Man, we glossed over a couple parts. You said you're moving chronologically through time, right?
Yeah, so right now we're getting ready to his security clearance getting revoked.
Okay.
And then him getting an award. It wasn't the, excuse me, I need to retract that. It wasn't the Nobel Peace Prize. It was the Enrico Fermi Award. I butchered that. But yeah, go ahead. Anything I gloss over, feel free to pick up.
Enrico Fermi, the guy who did the Fermi paradox, right? Yeah. We glossed over two things. One, like when you talked about like him assembling the crew, it felt like a heist movie at that point, right? Yeah. Where it really was like, let's get the biggest brains we possibly can, get them under one roof,
and trying to get people out of in countries that are occupied too. Like fucking, it was he's like, we don't even have men there, He's like, dude, phenomenal. Well, what was the other?
The test.
The bomb.
The Trinity test.
Hey, Wikipedia, big flop on that.
Yeah,
so I love just how much was on the, how much money they put into it, and they're like, we're gonna lose our jobs if this thing doesn't go off. And the fact that it was raining, and it's like, shit, this might not. Well, we know it's gonna go off, but they made you feel like it wasn't gonna go off.
They did, and they also like they were like taking bets, right, on like what was actually going to happen when it
Mm-hmm.
went off. And it's just like, oh, like is it going to explode? Like is the
Is the
entire
atmosphere?
atmosphere
Yeah.
just boned? Um, I thought that sequence was incredible because like you knew what was going to happen, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we as people living in the future of this event, like we knew what was going to happen, but they still found a way to make it incredibly compelling and like somehow unexpected, right? Everyone was preparing for it in a different way. Everyone was
Mm-hmm.
had like their own horrified faces and awe,
I
and you
was
could
hoping
tell.
the guy
You
that
could,
wasn't wearing the shit was gonna be blinded or the windshield was gonna hit him in the face.
oh
I'll
no,
be honest.
that was Hartnett and Jack Quaid, right? Wasn't that
I think.
I think that was the dude from uh that show that everyone loves based on the comic on Amazon. Why am I blanking on this? I host a comic book podcast. The Boys. The
No,
Boys.
the
It's the
boys.
guy from The
Okay.
Boys.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I didn't think that was Huey.
Also,
Like in the car. I might have been wrong.
I googled it. They spent $2 billion on the Manhattan Project between over 2 years, just like getting everything ready.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I went to inflationcalculator.com, usinflationcalculator.com. That's the equivalent of $33.9 billion today.
It's just 2 years ago.
What's up?
You said it was 2 years ago.
Oh no, they spent $2 billion
Oh,
over the
sorry.
course of 2
I
years.
thought you
in
meant
the
like when they were making this. I was like, what the fuck happened? But yeah, and it's crazy too because I never really, I guess, realized like, the cores and shit that went into it, like how much actually went into it and how much construction needed to be like just put into the bomb itself.
That was a great like framing device too that they had, right? Like they had like those fish bowls full of marbles and they kept
Mm-hmm.
counting like the amount of uranium and plutonium that they were developing as time went on. So like I thought that was like a really great simple like mimetic tracking device just to like know how much time has passed because I think they
Yeah.
said that like they're able to develop one thing of plutonium a month and then two things of uranium a month.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Whatever. But just like the tracking the passage of time in such a long movie that was jumping back and forth between different timelines and just like different tensions between people. I personally appreciated that. I thought that
Yeah.
was a really clever fix.
So we are right at let me get here. At the hearing, Oppenheimer, even though he had a bunch of people testifying in his defense, unfortunately he's betrayed by Teller's and other associates' testimony while Strauss exploits his associations with current and former communists. So they're just trying to tie him down as a communist. Clearance is revoked, damaging his public image and neutralizing his policy influence. So later at Strauss's Senate confirmation hearing, Hill exposes Strauss's personal motives in engineering Oppenheimer's downfall, and I fucking love that scene so much. Like, every hearing, you see Strauss just thinking he's king shit. He has, he has the king in check, and then Hill comes and fucking just they were not expecting it, and it floored me too. I was like, yes, like fuck, that was awesome.
Well, especially because what's his nuts? Alden Aaron Reich, right? Like the guy who played Han Solo in the
Mm-hmm.
Solo movie, and the guy who was fucking amazing in the Hail Caesar movie. You guys haven't seen Hail Caesar, another movie about communists that I cannot recommend enough. It's hilarious. He was just like telling us like, yeah, the votes are in the bag, like this thing's all but over, like you just got to go through the motions at this point. And like he was the one who kept like talking to Strauss and like sussing out like more parts of the story, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just like trying to like get Strauss to like admit stuff, because like when we first meet Strauss he seems like a really nice benevolent person, and Oppenheimer seems like the dick in the scene in the beginning, right? And then like the way like those two completely flip as the
Yep.
movie goes on, and then Strauss becomes like the worst person you could imagine having this job. And
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer, I think relatively successfully becomes like a sympathetic figure. I mean, it's like hard to feel too bad for the guy who invented nuclear, just the concept of nuclear holocaust. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're like that sucks, but like also invented nuclear reactors and nuclear power. So it's like, all right, like that's kind of cool, right? Like, it's tough, you know. So like I don't want to say like I feel bad for this person, but he definitely became less of a dick throughout the movie than Downey did,
Hmm.
right?
So we end with President Lyndon B. Johnson. Whoops. StreamYard was messed up. Sorry about that. We end with President Lyndon B. Johnson presenting Oppenheimer the award as a gesture of political rehabilitation. And then we are revealed Oppenheimer and Einstein's earlier conversation, not about Strauss, but rather about nuclear weapons and their far-reaching implications. And he wonders whether the Trinity test that he helped create launched a chain of reactions that could lead to nuclear holocaust. And that's where we end. And I thought it was a powerful ending. And I felt there was a lot of moments in there that were just really powerful messages about, you know, like what he was doing at the time, or, you know, like overcoming like whatever he needed to. I mean, like you said, the dialogue was just top tier in this. So, I mean, closing remarks, like, what are your thoughts?
I think this movie, I don't know how many more times I'm going to watch it in my lifetime, because like this movie is really heavy. This movie is really dark. This movie talks about a period that's like kind of hard to be proud of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because of like the legacy that's left with it. But I think this movie is like I feel so fucking lame saying this. Like it's an achievement, right? Like the fact that he could take something so dense and make it so compelling and captivating and so long, but I was still interested 3 hours in. I was still like dying to know what happened next.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's huge. And like it did. I was watching this other movie called 20th Century Women, and there's like a narration where she's talking about like her kid in 1979 versus like her kid now. And she was like, yeah, when people stopped being scared of nuclear war and started being scared of the weather, you know, talking about like the impending climate crisis. And after this movie, I'm like, no, I'm kind of scared of nuclear war again,
Yeah.
actually. Like, this seems like a major concern. It's like, oh, wait, like the US has 9,000 nuclear missiles. Like, oh, it's a lot, man. That's a lot of bombs to have. I don't know if we
Yeah.
need that many.
And I mean, the amount of deterrence they have to try to shoot them down, like, that's the thing. If the second one gets launched, they're all getting launched, and it's pretty much just, hey, we got 30 minutes to you know,
Well, that
live, laugh, and love.
yeah, that's that movie War Games, right? That was the entire point. Like the only way to win the game is to not play.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So you know, I thought this was a great movie. Maybe a little bit on the long side, but rightfully so. I felt they hit so many good points, so many different degrees of his character. I don't know how much of that is 100% true. You know, how much is maybe fabricated to fill in the spots. But overall, I mean, and definitely took a subject that I didn't think would be nearly as captivating, and really kind of exploited as much of it as possible, and in all the right ways. I think the timeline alternating was phenomenal. I think that really kept the pacing going and kept you guessing, because you were always wondering what was going to happen at that hearing. So I mean, you'd watch a scene, and even if maybe that scene wasn't as lackluster, you were still captivated by the previous timeline to be like, okay, well, like, what's going to happen next? Like, how is this going to play into things? And so I definitely think it's, you know, a worthy watch. That being said, though, it's time for us to wrap up. We got about half an hour in. George, I appreciate you stopping by. Go ahead and give a shout out to your social media platforms and what you do.
Oh yeah, I'm George. I host a comic book focused podcast called Shortbox Summary, where we really just take a look at the books I was reading when I was in high school, and we're trying to figure out if they were good or if I was 15. So if you like the mid 2000s and just miss talking about the music, the movies, the TV, the sports, everything that was going on, come check it out. We're available everywhere you can get a podcast, and it's at Shortbox Summary on Twitter and Blue Sky and probably Threads by the time you're hearing this. So
Absolutely. And guys, you already know what the deal is. I'm keeping it geekly, baby. Doing the number one, bringing the latest and the greatest from retro to current gen gaming and comics and everything in between. We've officially merged everything together. So I gotta come up with a better. I don't know. I got froze. I was like, what the fuck am I going to say? Joffrey and Cody, keeping it geekly. I don't know. But with that being said, it's time for us to wrap up. I hope you all have a fantastic Thursday. But most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.